Buddy, how are you guys doing today? This is Jim from the Pain PT, and I'm really happy to bring another success story today with you guys. I have Chris on the line here. Chris, how you doing?
Doing well today. How you doing?
Okay. We just talked off air how, bring you on to share your story. And it's always sometimes a little nervous in the beginning of how you want to say it, but I always tell people, every story is unique and yours is as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you and you can start wherever you'd like in terms of your story.
Sure. My story honestly starts a year and a half ago. I had just gotten married and was like coming down from the wedding. And anybody who's gotten married and has to plan for a big event like that knows that it's a lot of stress on you mentally as well as physically. Well, I thought that once that was over, and it would be just smooth sailing for me, and I wouldn't really have anything else to really worry about. But at the same time, I was also thinking like, well, what's next? So after the new year, so this was last January 2023, I started noticing when I was going back to work. I'm a public school teacher. I teach first grade, and I started noticing some light back pain the first week back after the winter break. And I ignored it. I didn't really pay attention to it. I had been experiencing some bouts of back pain, but very slight. And then I just got up from a chair. That's all I did. I got up from a chair at school, and all of a sudden, my back felt like it was absolutely on fire. I was not able to walk the rest of the day. This was a Friday. I spent the next 2 days not really able to do much. Thankfully, by Thursday or by the following Monday, it passed and I was able to go on with my life. But by that point, I didn't really associate it with anything going on in my emotional world. Um, I thought it was purely physical. I went through the medical route. I went to see an orthopedic. I went to physical therapy. And I thought I was healed. I thought these stretches and these exercises are what I need. I have scoliosis, and I thought that might have something to do with it. So fast forward to this past school year. So we're going ahead now to fall 2023. And in
You had a gap
that,
there where you felt pretty good. You didn't have any upticks during the time after the therapy and stuff. You felt pretty good for a while.
correct. And when I think back on that time, it wasn't that stressful. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And by the time I felt very good, it was last summer. So I was definitely feeling okay. And there wasn't a lot of stress and things I was worrying about. So if we fast forward to October of last year, 2023, I had the most difficult beginning of my school year I've probably ever had. Um, and there was a lot of different challenges that happened, and a lot of things that really impacted me at work. Um, and I had a vacation that I planned on going to. Um, I planned on going to Italy with my family, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to go on this vacation and I'm not going to worry about everything else that's going on in my life. I'm not going to worry about all the other stress. Well, what happened was I was thinking about it a lot in Italy. I couldn't help but not talk about it to everybody I was around. But I tried to let it go. But I remember coming back on the plane and the anxiety was just building up in me so much. And I started experiencing that lower back pain again in
Mm.
my seat when I was on the plane.
Coming
And
home, coming
uh,
home, back to the
coming
US.
home, correct. But it was isolated in my lower back, in the same place it had been that past year. And so I come back, I get back into my routine. The dynamics at work are still very stressful. Um, and so I go through that entire week and the pain just starts to get worse. Um, but I try to ignore it. It leaves my lower back and I start feeling pain in my upper thigh. Um, and it would go away instantly. Well, then by Halloween last year, I woke up one morning and I literally could not walk. I got out of bed. I was in excruciating pain. Any weight I put on my right leg, I had excruciating pain. And I like remember a few times falling over to the floor, not being able to be mobile for about an hour or so. Sometimes it would take me 2 hours to really get going. Um, and so that was really scary, especially when I've never really had any physical issues like that besides my lower back. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if it's sciatica? Because I really felt like I had all the symptoms of sciatica. It was becoming shooting leg pain, a tightness, a cramping pain. So I did everything. I went back to my doctor. I went to see a spine doctor. I went to see a sports medicine doctor. I went back to physical therapy. My spine doctor gave me a steroid injection. So I went through that whole medical route. Um, and the steroid injection, frankly, didn't do anything. By this point, it's Christmas, and I was really unable to walk. Um, I was working. I mean, maybe that's a little dramatic. I was still walking, but I was having a very hard time walking, and it was very hard to do my job on a day-to-day basis. Looking back, I don't know how I did it. But by this point, it's Christmas. I'm really struggling. And when I think about it, there was tremendous anxiety, tremendous emotional stuff going on. And I was in fear every single day about what my day was going to look like, how pain was going to impact it. Was this going to be a good day? Was this going to be a bad day? My spinal doctor said that if the shot didn't work, I should get surgery, and that just threw me. I'd never expected that to happen to me. I was miserable. I felt like I didn't have my life. I canceled so many plans. I was supposed to go to um, India for my husband's family. His cousin was getting married. I had to cancel that. I was supposed to go on a trip with my friends. I had to cancel that. And I just made my world so, so small. And I was looking up going on disability at work. When I think back on it, I had all those classic TMS symptoms we talk about here. So much of that, um, all of those emotional things that I had going on, I was repressing it. Um, and so when I would have never discovered this work. I have to give credit to my younger brother because he has an autoimmune disease called POTS syndrome, which if people don't know what that is, it has to do with your heart rate and it can cause all kinds of crazy symptoms in your body. Well, nothing was really working for him. So he said, have you ever heard of the mind body approach? And I was like, what? What's that? And it sounded so hippy dippy. But at this point, I was like, I'm ready to try anything. I will do anything and everything to get out of this pain because it was just impacting me so greatly. And so I started by listening to a podcast by, if you know this work and you're familiar with the TMS world, you might have heard of a woman named Nicole Sachs, and she's taken on a lot of John Sarno's work involving TMS, and um, everything she described was me to a T. I had so many moments where I just became emotional and I cried listening to these podcasts because they were so real and they felt like my story so much. So I started that in January. Um, and that was before I got to talk to Jim. I didn't get to talk to him until about a month after that, but I had started that work and I started journaling right away. Started journaling. That was really the tool that helped me. Some people say other tools help them, like meditating and things like that. Meditating didn't really help me. I want to get to that place where meditating helps me, but really just know that if you you just have to find the tool that works for you. You don't necessarily need to say, "Oh, I must meditate today and I must journal." You just pick one and focus on that. Focus on the one that you're most comfortable with and the one that you feel like is helping you the most. And for me, journaling helped me organize my thoughts. It helped me make sense of some childhood experiences I had that I never really dealt with. Um, there were so many things I learned about myself just from journaling and going through all these things that happened to me. And one of the things I discovered was the reason I had all this pain was associated with the fact that I had such a difficult beginning of my school year. And I just started letting all of those emotions out. And it helped tremendously. I remember I would have some journal entries where I would write, and after I would write, all my pain would be gone for a couple hours. And I was like, this is incredible. And that's when I knew that it wasn't something physical. I was diagnosed, I forgot to mention this. I was diagnosed in November because I did get an MRI and I did have a herniated disc. So automatically, you think you needed surgery for that. But I realized in that moment when I did that journal entry for the first time and I felt the pain lift, I was like, it can't be my herniated disc. Herniated discs don't necessarily have to cause me all this terrible pain. It's got to be emotional stuff that I'm repressing. And I just kept practicing that. And
Mm.
at first, it was still very hard. I was in a lot of pain still for a couple months, but I just worked on wearing it loosely. And Jim and I worked on it a lot, and he was super helpful with it. And then I would just have these little wins. Every couple weeks or so, I would have this little win, whether it was a breakthrough in something I understood about myself, whether I relaxed something in my nervous system or helped. I did something that helped me deal with my anxiety, my journaling. I felt it in my body and I noticed my symptoms going down. And that's what's worked for me. And since May, I've felt minimal pain. It's basically gone. I still feel it from time to time. I'm still working on dealing with the, remaining parts of it, but it does not affect me on a day-to-day basis, and it does not impact me. I flew to California for the first time in a couple years. In June, I just traveled to Atlanta to visit my in-laws, and that's a 9-hour drive because I live in Washington, D.C. So I was able to do all of that and not have any pain and had a great end to my school year. So, yeah, that's the gist of my story.
Yeah.
So,
And you mentioned that's a great story. And also, I like how you highlight the journaling because it is some people, like you said, don't journal, but then other people do. Like, and you really connected with that. And you said repressing your emotions. So maybe tell the audience a bit about your style, like because of how you grew up and how your style of repressing emotions. Like you maybe didn't deal with emotions, maybe a little more how it was for you, just day to day, and how you repress your emotions.
so really what I came to realize a really huge breakthrough I found early on was I grew up with like tremendous fear in my life. And a lot of that came from various things. It came from being bullied because I'm gay. Another thing that happened was just I grew up in a household where my family argued and fought a lot, and um I realized that internally my brain and my body always had to feel like it was scared about something. Um, and so because of that, the fear around my pain and feeling scared about how it would impact me was the main reason why my pain was so bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So you're highlighting the emotion of fear, right? Which is turned into
yeah.
being anxiety. And like you said, linking back to your past of feeling unsafe at times or insecure, yeah, that ramped up. And that's what, like you said, that plane ride home was an indicator of your anxiety and then the back pain going up. So yeah, so you identified that. So a lot of your journaling was around writing about that. Is that what came out of your journaling a lot? One of the themes was this insecurity or not feeling safe.
Right. Well, in the beginning, that's what was coming up because I was really trying to do a lot of work where I would be really trying to uncover things that were happening in my past. I was really trying to get to the root of it. But I also want to say, and I know Jim said this too, that you don't necessarily have to get to the root of all of your problems that have ever happened to you in your life in order to be better. But I just wanted to figure it out because I had never done so much self-discovery before, and it helped me. But as time went on, I didn't need to go so deep. So in the beginning, because nothing was helping me, journaling became my safe space. When I was in so much pain, I would get on the floor and I would write 3 times a day sometimes. And journaling just helped me organize my thoughts. So if you follow Nicole Sachs's work, which I recommend people do, because I think she's a great addition to what Jim does, and you got to find what tool works for you. Curable app is great as well. But what Nicole talks about in her journaling is to write down things you're angry and upset about, and basically at the end of it, rip it up and throw it out. To tell you the truth, I didn't do that all the time. I found that because journaling helped me get to so many revelations and breakthroughs, I kept a lot of my journals. There were some that were just a complete mess. I'm like, I gotta throw this out. This is not going to be literate tomorrow. But most of them I've kept, and I have on occasion gone back and looked at them and gone, ah, that's what happened on that day. Because sometimes if was experiencing pain, I'd go back and look at a page that I thought was helping me feel reassured, and so that's why I did. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I would start doing was writing down my symptoms, and then I would get to the middle of the section and I would think, what could this really be about? What's going on today? And then some stressful moment would come up. And so after that, I would conclude it by ending on a high note, trying to end on a high note. And I would say things to myself like give myself some type of self-affirmation, or I would say, you're okay. This pain is just a neural pathway in your brain that's being caused by this fear you have today, or whatever that may have been. But that was an example that often came up. And
Yeah.
so after that would be over, it would be gone, or it would be pretty much almost gone. So,
Yeah. So you kept getting the good positive feedback, right? Symptoms would go down. And then I like that idea that you went back and saw, you could look back and say, oh yeah, that's right. So it reminded you that what this was, right? That the pain was, oh yeah, that happened on this day. And it's great when you can see the connections to stress and right into your emotions and then see the symptoms also dial up, right? Okay, yeah, that's what this is. And so the more you made those connections, right, in the journal, it sounds like the journaling was very helpful for you to make sense of that. And I think it is helpful for a lot of people. And some people shy away from it, and so I think it's nice you're highlighting it because some people they don't like to write or they're scared to do it, but it can be quite powerful, like you're alluding to connect with your emotions and connect with your feelings.
right. I just learned to let go and say, what do I have to lose? And I think if anybody is at the place I was, where you're in so much pain and it's impacting you so greatly that you're desperate to do anything, I really recommend giving this a try. And it didn't work the first couple times I would journal. In fact, it took me a couple weeks to really do it, but I stuck with it because I thought, I might be getting something out of this. But I was also listening to podcasts. I was talking with Jim. I had that support. And you really just have to find the support that works for you. And
Yeah.
the way to figure out what works for you is by trying few different tools out. Not once, not twice, but spending a week doing it, spending a couple weeks on a different tool, figuring out what really resonates and works with you. But um, and once you can, and once you find a tool like this, it can change your life. And I was telling Jim in my last session, it absolutely changed my life. I still have anxiety. That's not going to go away. It's hardwired, but I have tools to deal with it. And I know so much more about myself and the way I operate on a day-to-day basis. It's so uplifting to have that and to feel like I can go out into the world feeling okay. And it has made me more confident in myself. It has helped me become, it really has unlocked a lot of things. And I know Nicole Sachs also says the pain is the biggest, littlest part. And it's so true because it helped me figure out what other things I wanted that were bothering me too. It wasn't just school. School was a part of it, but it was also, I needed to expand my friend network a little bit. That was something that I was struggling with at the time. Um, some other things I'm struggling with, and still am, is like my eating habits and whatnot. And I'm trying to work on, eating better. Sometimes I overeat. And so a lot of that has to do with the neuroscience, I found out. So really, a lot of the stuff that you do with your pain can just make huge shifts in your life. And it's been great. And to tell you the truth, if anyone else is a public school teacher right now, in this year, 2024, it's a difficult time. We're in a very polarized time in the United States, especially. Um, and, a lot of teachers feel like they have to put their heart and soul into everything, which you do, and it's part of the work. But we take so much of our work home with us, and it's not just papers, it's not just our backpack, it's not our computer, it's the emotions our kids have, the emotions we have about helping to make an impact with them. But in order for me to heal, I think it was important to know that, you have to really try to let go of some of those emotions that you find yourself taking home, or being aware of them, because it will impact you. And, I think about so many other colleagues of mine who have burned out because they are so empathetic and they are so emotional in that way. And it's kind of learning to balance that. And this tool has been so helpful with helping me find that balance in my life. And it's helped me be a better teacher, a better person. Um, and so I can't say better things about it. It's just been
Yeah,
wonderful.
that's great. Yeah, and I like what you just said about that, about being empathetic, too empathetic. And I see a lot of people with that, they're taking on other people's things because they're absorbing that, and they end up getting similar pains or activating their own pains, or emotions are building in them. And then, like you said, they burn out or they get TMS. So it's great recognition that, okay, you need to dump those, which is what the journaling helps. And then also to learn not to take them on, right? To try to not take these things on as much, because we are in a very stressful world and people are getting overloaded so easily. So it's great that you made these connections and you found this work, right? Because a lot of people aren't, that's the thing, they're not even making the connection between the stress, their emotions, taking things on, and then their physical symptoms. And so I think that was a big thing for you to find that out and then start doing some of the work and then say, oh, wow, it is shifting. And you probably see that in other teachers too. I imagine people suffering from things, or people, physical ailments, that it's probably TMS as well. Because once you know this work, right, your eyes are open now.
Absolutely. And I've pointed this into the direction of people I work with, and they're willing to try it, but yeah, absolutely. Because like I have a colleague of mine who, whenever they get nervous, they like break out into hives. And I'm like, that's like such TMS right there. If
Mhm.
you've ever broken out into hives and had some kind of physical reaction to nerves going on inside of you, like that's so TMS. And once you're aware of it, sometimes that's half the battle for people. But and then they're willing to just stop, you know. Like I know John Sarno, a lot of people in the beginning have been healed by John Sarno's work, and they've, you know, they've read his book or they've listened to something on YouTube or whatever about him, and they've gone, ah, this knowledge has cured me. And but sometimes I really recommend to go deeper, and don't be afraid to go deeper, because the deeper you go, the more you uncover and the more you learn about how you operate on a day-to-day basis, and the better off you are in the long run, I think. And
Yep,
my
that's
work's
a
not done. I
fantastic
still
point.
got a lot more to do,
Yeah, you're right.
but
We
it's
do. And but
yeah.
that's a great point. I want to highlight that because some people get the book cure, they get the knowledge cure, like you said, but that's on the surface. Like to go deeper is the key to understand yourself and your tendencies, your personality, where this came from, why you are the way you are, the emotions you tend to repress, or the ones that get you going and making connections. Yeah, that's the deep work. That's the real work. And I love the fact that you're saying there's still more because all of us have stuff to work on to some degree. So it's never done, never fully over with. But yeah, that's exactly it. That's the meat. That's the meat and potatoes versus just the book cures. Oh yeah, knowledge. Okay, but that's not going deep, like you mentioned.
Right, right. When I first started this work, I had that knowledge and that the journaling, I was doing it, but I wasn't really getting anywhere with it. I had to figure out a style of journaling that worked for me. And for me, like I said, organizing my thoughts, keeping the journals helped. Um, but those first 2 weeks or so, I was like, wow, I feel a lot better. And then all of a sudden, one day I woke up and I was in excruciating pain again. And I had what some people might call in this community an extinction burst, where you have an extreme flare up of symptoms for a couple days. And I had what some people also call with this work a symptom imperative. And for me, and a symptom imperative is just like another symptom in your body. Like sometimes your symptoms move. Jim has talked about this. My symptoms didn't move physically, they moved to like my anxiety. And I was just having panic attacks all the time. I was like, what's going on with me? And I had to realize it was just a symptom imperative. And it just made me want to dig deeper into the work because of it. And so I encourage you, when you have a symptom imperative, if you experience other symptoms in your body after you think you've healed one of them, explore a little more and figure out, why am I having this? You know, what is the fear I still have? What's the connection I've not made? Lots of things like that might come up for you. Um,
Yeah,
and that once I figured that out, you know, the anxiety was the next step, you know,
yeah,
and that once I
that's a good
figured that
thing to
out, it got
highlight.
me through.
Yeah, and that happens a lot where you can go from physical anxiety, like the somatic anxiety where you have the symptom, then it switches into pure anxiety and or pure depression for some people. And so that tells us what it is, right? Like, oh, wow. It's the same thing, but now it's in a pure form. And sometimes people get mental anxiety. So it can go back and forth. But yeah, the fact that you just made that connection and you said earlier too, the fact that look, you've always been anxious because your upbringing, that's something you're gonna have to continue to work on. I think that's important because it's deep for a lot of people. The anxiety runs deep and right, you're always having to keep a tab on it, right? To manage it, to look for it because it can crank up and take over again, right? Anybody can have a symptom again. So yeah, maybe speak more to that because that's something you've lived with your whole life, it sounds like.
Yeah. And in one of the things I did to cope with my anxiety, which I don't think was always good, was to constantly be busy. When I was 25, I made a big move from living in New Jersey, where my parents and where I grew up, and I moved to Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., because that's where I got a teaching job. And if anyone who's listening in the Northeast knows, getting a teaching job in the Northeast, at least back then, was very, very challenging. So I moved here all by myself, and it was very scary. And I really felt like I had to work very hard. When you're a teacher in your first year, you're always working super hard. I would work 12-hour days. I would be I was always hustling and I had this hustling energy. And sometimes it's good to have that hustling energy, especially when you're trying to learn a new job and you're absorbing everything. But I never let go of that hustling energy. I never let go of it. I had that energy and I just kept using it, and it was not helpful. And so it's no wonder after a very stressful event in my life, like, and a wonderful event like getting married, once that's over, it's no wonder I started developing symptoms, because I had this opportunity to sit in my thoughts with my anxiety, and I didn't have the luxury to be moving around so much and trying to keep myself busy, to keep the noise in my head quiet,
Mm,
and so um that that really was important for me to know, because especially if anyone else is around my age, I'm 33, but you sometimes feel so much pressure to just at this age and when you're younger in your 20s, to just feel like you have to soak in everything and get everything done, and um you know definitely work hard, but don't overwork yourself, because it could show up in your body, especially if you're not dealing with anxiety that's really creeping in there.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Good points. Yeah.
don't know
It
if that made any sense, but
No, it makes sense. It makes sense, and it makes sense the way you said it for you. And but the anxiety can ramp. Yeah, and one of the things that you said is just people stay busy, and that's a what we call like a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism or distraction. It helps to some degree, right? But it's not going to solve it. And I know for me personally, same thing. I grew up with anxiety. And for years, I just sort of, looking back, I go, I don't know how I got by. I ignored it, or I overrode it, or I just didn't even listen to it, but it was there. It was there. And so, same thing, you stay busy, but that's not solving it. That's like avoidance. So, I think when you decided to challenge, to confront this thing, you had to because of the back pain, and you started to look at it all. That's when things started to shift. You were no longer avoiding this stuff. You were actually contemplating it and, you know, feeling it and writing about it
yeah,
and getting into the depth of it.
yeah. And you know, I remember hearing from several people in the mind body community saying, one day you're gonna thank the pain for giving you this time in your life to go through it. And when I was going through so much pain, I was like, who the hell said this? Like, this is terrible. I don't want to hear this. But as I'm reflecting on that, and I have been leading up to our talk today, I was like, I really actually should thank my pain. I really am grateful for it in some way, because I uncovered so much about myself, and I learned about all the other things that were impacting me on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm going into my next school year in August, a month from now, and I feel like I'm going to have so many tools for dealing with and coping with the challenges that might come with a new school year and a new staff and a new group of students. And I didn't have that before. And I was saying before that, the pain is the biggest, littlest part. It is. I realized I needed to expand my friend circle a little bit, and I did. I made two new friends this year, and that's been really great. And I'm working on some of the eating challenges I have right now. That's more of my long-term goal. But again, the pain can wake you up sometimes and help you realize there's other things you have to do. It took me to really see the results in my body, and definitely give yourself patience, because not everybody heals quickly. I don't feel like I healed quickly, but for people who are listening that have been struggling for years, keep at it, because it's definitely everybody's on their own journey. And when you compare yourself to someone else on YouTube or someone else who talks about their success story, you can't, because your situation is so different than other people's. And you just have to remember that as you're going through this work.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I always say drop the timeline. And I think you did a good job of that. I remember we talked about it. You were, it felt like didn't put a ton of pressure on yourself. You knew what it was. You're just working the process, doing your journaling day in and day out, making connections, getting back to life, challenging yourself in some ways. And yeah, I think that's it. You kind of just you understood it and you just didn't say, okay, well, it's going to take what it's going to take. But you started seeing progress, not all at once, right? It took months, ups and downs and stuff. So I think that's important to realize it's not everybody wants the quick fix, but it's not typically like that for many people. Yeah,
Right. And celebrate the wins. Celebrate the wins because I struggled with that in the beginning. Every time I would have a small win and I would feel really good all day, I'd be like, oh gosh, when's this going to go away? And I'd be thinking about when the pain would come back. Don't do that. Celebrate your win because the more celebrations you can give, the more positive energy you can give towards your pain, the the more likely the neural pathways in your brain will, you know, realign to some of that positive thinking and positive energy.
absolutely. No, that's awesome. Yeah, because what happens is a lot of people, even if they're getting better, their mind drifts back to the anxiety again and fear. Oh no, I hope it doesn't come back. Like they quickly forget how good they've done and they start focusing on the negative again, and then it comes back. And so, yeah, the mind's very tricky with anxiety, right? It wants to go back to it a lot. And so, yeah, celebrating the wins is so important. I had some people, I talked to a lady last week. She says, yeah, write down every win. She goes, I actually document it as part of her journaling so she can see all the wins she had, so she can remind herself of how far she's come and what she's doing. And I think that's important.
Great idea. I should
Yeah.
do that next.
Yeah, there you go. Just before we finish, I mean, I want to highlight this anxiety again a little bit because it is such a prevalent thing and for people with symptoms. And just maybe share it for, before you had the back pain, like you said, you did have anxiety in your life. How did it show before? I'm just curious. I can't remember when we talked in session, did it come in just panic type feelings, or how did you feel your anxiety when you were younger or previously?
So I'm fortunate in ways where the anxiety never really impacted me physically with pain or other things like that. But I definitely am one of those people with anxiety that overthink. And especially in my mid 20s before I started going to therapy and things like that, um, I was always overthinking social situations, professional situations, and yeah, it would be a tenseness in my shoulders, or just like butterflies in your stomach, but more like chest, not chest pain, but just like feeling that anxiety, you know, kind of all those anxious symptoms, and you kind of hyperventilate a little bit. I did have a few panic attacks in my time. Um, but just I think for me too, I would always be if I would get it would always a lot of times it would come up during something stressful or something I was really nervous about, like a special event or, something where there was a lot of pressure. And so after it would be over, I would feel better and my anxiety would go away. But I never really analyzed it. And it would just keep happening to me over and over and over again. And it's normal to have anxiety before a big event, but my anxiety would be up here, and I would like not be able to get a couple words out sometimes because it would be so overpowering. Um, but since I've started this work, yes, of course, we're all human. We're going to have that anxiety and that nervousness before something big. That's the reason why. That's just part of our primitive brain. That's that's what helps keep us alive and motivates us to do things. But it no longer I'm no longer all the way up here to a place where like I have so much anxiety beforehand that I'm not eating, I'm not focusing. I'm able to um really know what's going on and move forward, if that makes sense. And so uh that's been helpful for sure.
Yeah.
But no, I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that I didn't have any other physical symptoms in the past.
Yeah, and that's but like you said, the anxiety is coming out in some way, and it always does. So I think important for people to understand that, you have people understand the classic anxiety, and you're getting, other stomach or heart palpitations or feeling tension in your shoulders. So it was physical, but it was more the classical anxiety where people say, "Oh yeah." But when we get these other pains, that's where people get tricked. They go, "Well, that doesn't back pain, anxiety." But it can go anywhere in your body. And so I think that's what I want to highlight today, that for you, it switches into, and in some cases can go into a neural pathway once, and then that's where it goes now. So it's almost like once it went into your back, it's like, well, that's where I go now. That's where my anxiety will shoot to, is the back, or a headache, or some other symptom. Or you, like you mentioned, the symptom imperative, very important. Anxiety is absolutely prone to be causing a symptom imperative, right? To shifting around or extinction bursts. So I'm glad you highlighted those two things because they're super common with anxiety. Um, so yeah, it's interesting to hear that how it just shifted and moved, but your back pain became your anxiety pathway, basically.
Absolutely. And it's still there a little bit. It's still there, especially if I'm out of my routine. My body will go, or my anxiety will be like, uh-oh, but then I have to work through that and go, oh gosh, like, that's not what's really going on here. It's just a neural pathway that associates a change in routine with worrisome things and not knowing what to expect. So I have to remember that. And I will also say I don't journal every day anymore because I don't feel like I need to. It has been such a helpful tool for me. But so you can get to that place where you journal um less because you don't have to, and just use it as a tool. I'm sure I'll use it a lot more when I get back into the school year, but there is no hard and fast rules about when you're supposed to do these things. And so
Yeah, good. I'm
when I
glad you
figured
said
that
that.
out, I thought that was very helpful for me.
Yeah, there's a time and a place, right? You did a lot in the beginning, throughout, and as you gotten better, you don't do it every single day. So that's great. Yeah, that's awesome, Chris. It's a great story. And I'm always happy when people can recover and using these principles and practices. And is there anything else you want to add just before we finish up today?
Um, nothing really, except just everybody that's out there, just hang in there. You can do it, because if, we're all struggling in some way, but I promise there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and just celebrate those small wins, and that will help you get to the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, fantastic. And you did a fantastic job yourself. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing the story, because it does help other people when they're struggling. And so I thank you so much for being here, and keep up the work you're doing, and spread the word as well, because it's so important to get this out to other people.
Absolutely will. Thank you so much, Jim.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Chris. Bye bye.